Collier Wise.
Here.
Erickson.
Here.
Holland.
Here.
Humphrey.
Here.
Mines.
Here.
Price.
Here.
Sorensen.
Here.
Ward.
Here.
Mayor Powell.
Here.
Student Representative Paulson.
Here.
Everyone, please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 3, minutes from June 5th regular meeting and June 5th special meeting.
A motion and a second to approve the minutes of both sessions. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 4, adoption of the agenda. John or Mike, do you know of any changes, corrections to the agenda? Not? You can take a motion for approval. Motion and a second to approve the adoption of the agenda as printed. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next item, visitors to be heard. Addressing the council. Persons addressing the council shall use the microphone at the podium. Please raise your hand to be recognized, go to the podium, and state your name and address. For items that are not on the agenda, members of the public may speak under visitors to be heard on any topic not on the agenda. Remarks are limited to 5 minutes and no decision will be made at this time. For agenda items, public testimony will be taken at the beginning of each agenda item after the subject has been announced by the mayor and explained by staff. Any citizen who wishes may speak one time for 5 minutes on each agenda item. Public testimony will then be closed and the topic will be given to the governing body for possible action. At this point, only city council members and staff may discuss the current agenda item unless a council member moves to allow another person to speak and there's unanimous consent from the council. Questions from the council members, however, may be directed to the staff or a member of the public through the presiding officer at any time. At this point, is there anyone in the audience that has an item that is not on the agenda that they wish to bring forth? Any item not on the agenda? Seeing none, turn it to the council. Anyone on the council have an item that's not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to public hearings. And item 6A, a retail on-off sale malt beverage license for the Vermillion Downtown Cultural Association for the Coyote Twin at 10 East Main Street. And Mike, please.
An application was received for a retail on-off sale malt beverage license from the Vermillion Downtown Cultural Association for the Coyote Twin at 10 East Main Street. The notice of hearing and police chief's report are included in the packet. This retail on-off sale malt beverage license would be for the licensing period starting July 1, 2017 to June 30th, 2018. City Council has the ability to issue a license on 2 criteria: a suitable person and a suitable location. As to suitable person, the association was issued a retail on-off sale wine license in January 2017. And the police chief report indicates there's been no department record that would reflect negatively on the applicant with respect to location. The wine license was issued to that location and approved in January. The police chief's memo is included in the packet and includes the following conditions. Sales will only occur in the second theater. The sales booth will be inside the second theater. The person selling alcohol will be TAM certified. Only persons 21 or older would be allowed in the second theater when sales and consumption are occurring, and sales would stop 2/3 of the way through the show. The fee is $300 with half retained by the city. Following input from the public hearing, City Council will be asked to make a decision to approve or deny the retail on sale malt beverage license for the period July 1, 2017 to June 30th, 2018.
Thank you, Mike. Is there anyone in the audience that has a comment or question on this item? Seeing?
I'm just here representing the BDCA,
Okay.
if there are any questions.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Anyone else in the audience at this point? I'll turn to the council, and would you please make your observation?
I was just curious, The memo says malt liquor, but the report from the police chief says wine. Which one are we dealing with here? Malt beverage? Okay.
No, it says it here. Okay. Council?
Move approval.
Motion and second to approve the retail on-off sale malt beverage license for the Vermillion Downtown Cultural Association for Coyote Twin at 10 East Main Street. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Item B, a special daily malt beverage license for the Vermillion Area Arts Council on or about July 8th, 2017 at 202 Washington Street. Anyone in the audience have comments or questions regarding that?
Hello, Phyllis Packard, and I represent the board of the VAC, and I have brought for the council, I don't know any of you remember Joe West. He was here for a number of years as a student in the master's program in fine arts, and he will be joining us July 8th, and we're inviting all of the council and the community to our festivities, which are also celebration of the new roof on the Washington Street Art Center.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Present this to the mayor.
For me? Is it signed?
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience have a comment or question? Seeing none, council?
Second.
A motion, a second, to approve the special daily malt beverage license for the Vermillion Area Arts Council on or about July 8th, 2017 at 202 Washington Street. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Item C is the first reading of ordinance 1357. Bear with me on this one. Zone change to exclude from the GB General Business District and include in the R3 Residential District the south 320 feet except for west 120 feet of Lot 1 and south 320 feet of Lot 4 and Lot 19 through 21, Block Johnson's Addition, Clay County, South Dakota, and to exclude from the R2 Residential District, include in the R3 Residential District, Lot 1, including Units 1 through 4, Block 2, Johnson's Addition, City of Vermillion, Clay County, South Dakota. Jose, please.
Thank you.
Did I get that right?
Yeah. On July 2008, the city adopted a new zoning ordinance. That zoning ordinance, if I may, here and there we go. That zoning ordinance changed this area here from the zoning that it was, which was B1 General Business District, which at that time allowed high-density apartments to be constructed within the business district. From that zone, it was actually changed to either, like it shows here, either general business or R2. The new zoning, as it happened, does not allow for multifamily units of the density as it was previously allowed. So what happens is that some of these properties are actually right now non-conforming uses, such as this one here and then these two here. What that non-conforming means is that if the property is damaged to 50% or more of their value, they could not rebuild the structures as they currently exist, or if they go to refinance or purchase a property or whatever the case might be, they may not be able to finance the property because the bank will not finance it because it doesn't fit within the zoning district as it is right now. Based on those issues, the city actually received a petition for zone change from the owners of the properties within this bold line to be rezoned. They're asking for the properties to be rezoned from the current zoning, which again, as I mentioned, general business or R2, to the R3 residential district, which would allow high-density multifamily, so anything above a fourplex would be allowed in there. In addition, what that would also additionally do is that this empty lot would also then be open for higher density development. So anything higher than that, well, at this point, it's only zoned for commercial. So if it were to be rezoned R3, then again, you could put any size of apartment dwelling, depending on the area. Staff believes that this area was unintentionally removed from the lots or from the district as it was previously zoned. As mentioned at the Planning Commission, the City Council should take into consideration that the rezone of this area would likely spur other rezoning in the area for R3 districts. The item was discussed at the June 12th Planning Commission meeting. At that meeting, the few neighbors that could be affected by the rezone attended the meeting. The main concern expressed by the neighbors was the possibility of drainage issues if the empty lot were to be developed. After hearing all concerns, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the rezone. City's costs at this point is just any public notices that have been published. Future costs would be publishing of the ordinance if it were to be approved. Administration recommends approval of the first reading of Ordinance 1357.
Thank you, Jose. This is a public hearing. Anyone in the audience that wishes to may speak at this time on this issue. Yes, please.
Members of the council, my name is Jill Schaefer. I live at 1025 Cottage, which is one of the properties that abuts back onto the land that's being rezoned. There's really two issues here. One is the existing buildings that are, and if the camera would look down at this for a moment, I don't know how to make that happen. Thank you. Right here are the existing buildings, and over here is the existing building, and here is the new development going to be. This is Cottage Street. And the problem that we have with this area is that I have lived, this isn't the problem, I have lived in this house prior to these buildings going in. And Farrell Christensen with the city was here at that time. John Prescott, Jose, the city engineer, have come after. They weren't here during the problems with this. As soon as these buildings were put in, one, all the runoff was directed to these houses down here, physically directed. You can go and you can see it, and nothing has been addressed about that. The runoff also goes across the field, across Elm, comes around Alumni Street here and onto Cottage, where we literally, when you have a rain, have Cottage Avenue, the three houses from the corner, wall to wall on the street, are filled with water. I know one of the councilmen, Brian Humphreys, is on the corner of that, on an elevated corner. It floods. It's not addressed the way it needs to be addressed. Prior to coming here, I had talked with Farrell Christensen and Jose and John Prescott extensively about this, as we did during those years. There is a problem. They're out on Highway 50. What should go in there is a sunken pipe, but I believe what I'm hearing, we talked about this extensively at the meeting, is that the state has to approve it, and the state keeps disapproving it. And people at the city planning asked, why is that not being approved? Is there anything we can do about it? It was kind of tabled, and ultimately Prescott said, the highway's going to be rebuilt in 2020. Let's visit it then, some section of it. I'm told by the city that if that is put in, it will drain this area. Right now, what we have is too much runoff, not enough storm sewer to take it away. And if you put this building in the field there, and we're all acting like we're just excuse me, a little bit of nerves. We're all acting like we're just rezoning now for some hypothetical future use. The owner has already contracted or in negotiation with the person who is going to develop it. So we know this is going to be sold as soon as you guys rezone it. And once it's put in there, we're going to have more multi-housing in there without any way to accommodate the runoff. Now, instead of having a field absorb it, which already is not enough, 50% of the lot, there was a confusing thing on it. Jose at one point said over 50, if I'm getting this right, if a retention pond is going on there. Farrell had said to me 50%. In any event, you have 50% concrete with no place for the runoff to go, no plans for developing any place for the runoff to go. And this person who lives down here, can you tell me his name? Who is the person who lives?
Mr. McDonald?
Mr. McDonald, from what I am hearing through Brian.
He's right behind you, Joe.
Are you going to, which I don't even know who he is. Is he going to talk about it then, so I don't need to go into it? Fine. And so we are having this developed without any place for the water to go. We're being told a retention pond will be put in it. The most likely development, if there is a retention pond put into it, would be, can it zoom out at all, or am I just stuck with, that's fine, that's good. Here's our yards, here's the existing buildings, here's Cottage, here's Elm, where it will then be built, and then Alumni. The building, most likely, in order to put a retention pond on, the retention pond would be put by the streets. So you have a building that would go like this, parking that would go like this, your retention pond there, one breeding ground for mosquitoes, but we're being told that will be monitored. I don't really know how the city is responsible for monitoring a private individual's land. And the city has said that when this overflows, the plan is for it to run off back around over to Cottage. Let alone these buildings here, if you have a roof that is sloped on the back half of it, you're going to have, and I calculated, 30 foot wide by 200 foot long, 2 inches of rain is going to drop 7,000 gallons of water into our yard there. I know I'm going on, please.
We need to let other people speak, please.
No, okay. Without there being anything, one, we can't turn a blind eye to the purpose of this, and the purpose of rezoning this is for the sale. The owner who was planning on selling it asked you guys to rezone it for that purpose. The city has not offered a plan to deal with the water that is there already, and until there is some plan in place to take care of that, it can't go ahead because it's just a burden on the residents of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Next person, please.
I'm Glenn McDonald. I live at 935 Cottage. This is my wife, Stephanie. We are the ones that Mrs. Schaefer is referring to that are affected the worst by the development of the apartments. If we can see that design, I'm not sure which house is mine in that row on Cottage.
It's that one.
This is about after, what, 2 inches of rain?
We've got a couple of these.
I have one.
Explain that.
I think yours is this one. Because I think this is the parking lot. But
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a copy.
So, yeah, we're located right here. Sure. So,
These pictures were taken in May after one random 2-inch rain. I don't know exactly the year that the apartments were constructed. Supposedly at that time, the ordinance allowed for apartments to be constructed in our backyard. When I bought this property, it was a cornfield one year and a bean field the next. Before we knew it, the apartments were slapped up. I know that Slowey Construction out of Yankton erected the apartments. When they erected them, as you can see from the picture that I've given you, the parking lots, the grade of the parking lot is sloped into my backyard. There's one manhole cover that's about this big that's supposed to take on all that water.
Is that this?
This is from 2 inches of rain. My backyard is half full of water. I have 2 sump pumps running almost 12 months of the year. And I've seen the city bill of the kid that lives across the street from me. Mine averages about $80 a month in electricity, higher than his. I've also visited with the city. I've talked to Jose, who's been very receptive. This drainage line, water line that runs from the back of my property in a city easement area right here, drains to Highway 50. Highway 50 is full of marsh grass and cane grass, and the ditch is usually full of water. So when that water drains to the north, the ditch is full of water, there's no place for it to go. So it backs up. My water table is to the max 12 months of the year. Second of all, if you look at this picture, my sump pump hose was in that pit at the time, one manhole cover. If you look down in, as I had my city councilman Brian was at my house last week, we look in that drain at the present time, water is maybe this far below the cover of the drain. We haven't had rain in 3 months. And that's how much rain I've got. I'm pumping 12 months of the year until it freezes up. I don't know how, in talking to Jose down at the city, these apartments were built and Jose was not here at the time. From what I understand, this one sewer line, drainage line that goes to Highway 50 was an afterthought. When they allowed those apartments to be built, there was no design for drainage at that time. And second of all, they sloped that whole apartment complex into the residential, into my backyard. In the wintertime, all the snow that comes off that apartment is dumped, pushed right to there and piled as high as the ceiling and melts in the spring, so already I'm starting with water the water table is full. Starting in March, 1 2-inch rain, and I've got water in my basement. I have 2 sump pumps. I have put in a second sump pump. The last time in May when I got water in my basement, the sump pumps had this much water in them. It's coming in through my foundation. It's coming in through all 4 corners because this water table is so high. As far as I'm concerned, I guess as to let these apartments be constructed with no form of drainage plan in the first place is ridiculous. And that was whoever the previous city engineer was that okayed this project. I understand that it was zoned as, I don't know the difference between R2 and R3, which you're trying to go to now to keep it residential. But if they were allowed to build these apartments with no drainage system, it was a catastrophic mistake on the part of the city and the city engineer. In the time since these apartments have been built, I have been flooded twice, in 2011, 2016. I have filed claims with my insurance company, which were $10,000 flood insurance. I got $8,500 of it, and by the time I took the $8,500, that doesn't touch the damage I have in my basement. I've had to pull all the sheetrock, I've had to pull the insulation, I've had to repaint, I've had to put new carpet in. I have a $7,000 bathroom I put in my basement. The vanity is swollen, the doors won't shut, the tile's falling off the floor.
The drainage is an issue.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and this has been going on, and I need some immediate resolution because my property value and the money it's costing me, in talking to Jose, they said maybe they could build us a berm. Well, a berm's all going to stop the water, but it's still in the water table.
Okay. Thank you for your input.
We need help. We need help.
Anyone else in the audience wish to comment?
Hello, good evening. Thank you for letting me come talk to you. I'm one of the owners.
What's your name, please?
Ryan Bear.
Bear?
Bear, yep, B-E-A-R. Yep. I am one of the owners of the properties on here, part of the property that's there. We obviously bought them after the fact of when they were built and didn't have any control over what the drainage issues were, and we have not done anything differently to affect drainage issues in that area. There is storm drains. As far as we're concerned, we can't, there's not much else we can do about that at this point. As far as the rezoning part of this, no matter what it's zoned, that's not going to change drainage issues in there. And whether or not we decide, I own the empty lot that we're trying to get rezoned. I believe from what I've talked to Farrell and Jose about, it was somewhat of a minor oversight when things got changed, and it probably should have been left at R3. It got changed. Obviously, it's kind of tough to change something that's already got buildings on there, and in that area, general business doesn't really fit that particular area. Whether or not we decide to sell the land or if we decide to keep it, because we are still considering either option, but at this point, do we build a business there or do we build some sort of apartments? The drainage issues on anything we build new would obviously have to be addressed. And so we're not, at that point, we would not make anything worse. We would actually probably try to do something at that point to maybe help the other issues. And instead of prohibiting it by not rezoning it and changing it to that, no matter what's built there, there's still going to need to be drained there. And it's either just leave it as an empty piece of property, an empty piece of dirt, or something's going to be built on it, whether it be general business or whether it be, at this point, general business. I guess if I really wanted to, I own Todd's Electric in town. I could go over there and I could build a shop there and concrete all the way around it. I'm not saying that I'm going to do that, but at this point, general business, that would fit general business criteria. So, like I say, anything that would be done in there, we did not do anything to change the drainage issues. I'm not saying that there's not. They are storm sewer. Anybody that's ever dug anywhere near that area knows that the water table in that area is already high. I've dug there. I've been a contractor in this town for over 19 years, and I've dug several pull bases between Holiday Inn, between the eye doctor out there. We've done several footings. You get down 2 or 3 feet anywhere out there and you hit water. And it don't matter almost any time of the year. It's just the way it is. And I don't know if anybody would argue that fact, but I've dug plenty of holes and know that even in July and August, when it's supposedly our driest months, there's moisture in the ground out there. It's kind of a swampy area. So, like I said, what we decide to do with it, we would still have to confer with both Jose and Farrell, and whether we build it, whether we sell it to somebody, nobody can just go in there and plop up something and go, here it is, take it or leave it. I mean, everything has to be approved, the plans have to be approved, things have to be put forward. Drainage issues have to be addressed at that point, or else the plans don't get approved and don't get taken forward. So the rezoning, I don't think is going to ever change the existing drainage issues. But like I said, if something does get built out there, maybe something can be done to help it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Aaron Armstrong, and I reside at 929 Cottage Avenue. I'm just south of Glen there, and been residing there about a year now. And what he said is absolutely true in regards to the drainage issue. I understand this gentleman's comment here about you purchased the property, and it was that way when you did purchase it. However, to say that there's not an issue now that you're not going to look at addressing it is quite frankly wrong. If you lived in that neighborhood, if you actually had
would you please address the council,
okay.
Please? Thank you.
It is an issue, and it's a big issue. From what I understand, there's only approximately a 12-inch pipe that's back there that's supposed to haul all that water out to 50, which, as explained before, is plugged from the entire complex there. And you saw the pictures. How is that supposed to adequately take care of the water that's back there? Can't. It's not right. And whether it got approved, how it got approved, I have no idea. I'm not an engineer, but I'm smart enough to know that if you had a manhole cover and you're taking that entire water from there, you're not going to be able to move it, especially at the rate that's coming down when you get heavy rains. So I guess I just want to, again, echo everything that Glenn had said, is that it is an issue with drainage there, and it is something that is going to need to be addressed. I have a sub pump as well. I have one. It consistently runs, constantly, all the time. And again, water table, I agree with what gentleman said here before. It is higher in that neighborhood. Do not disagree with that statement. However, it makes it even more imperative that we do look at drainage issues over there because of that. Because of adding a little bit more there creates that gigantic issues that we're dealing with right now. So I appreciate your time and appreciate your consideration in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else have questions, comments? One more time, anyone else wish to speak on this issue before we turn it to the council? Okay, council.
I have some questions for So it seems evident there is an issue. I don't think there's any question that there's a problem that people are encountering, but I think we might be dealing with two separate issues: drainage from the existing buildings and then the fear that a change in zoning could make the issues worse. So I just have a couple of questions. Have the drainage requirements and the general requirements as far as parking lot size and things like that changed since those previous apartments were built?
Yeah, yes, I have. Since then, we actually have adopted a storm drainage criteria that essentially makes anything that was constructed after 2015 they would have to meet with this criteria. Now, this criteria doesn't solve every issue. You're still going to have drainage problems. Doesn't matter what you do, but it tries to address a great majority of that, I guess, as far as issues that may arise due to construction.
Okay, and then if, for example, something that did conform with general business were built there, a commercial building, what is the difference between the drainage and parking requirements for that kind of building versus an apartment?
As far as the way the ordinance is written or the criteria is written, it requires that multifamily, commercial, and industrial developments meet the criteria. So that's the first thing. So commercial and the multifamily would actually have to meet that criteria. The criteria would be the same for either of the two. If it's new ground like this, new bare ground, they would actually have three options to kind of go through. If they put impervious, so the roof, concrete, parking, anything like that, over 50% of the area, and the lot to start with is less than an acre, then they would just have to have grass buffers and grass swales and so forth. So they don't require a pond, they just need something to absorb some of that moisture into the ground, and then clean the ground, the water as it goes into the storm sewer. If they do put, again, greater than 50% of the area be impervious and the lot is 1 acre or more, then they're required to actually put a detention pond. And that detention pond is actually sized based on the amount of impervious material, the storms that would be affecting the area and so forth. Now, the third option that they have is that they could actually build 50% or less of the area with impervious material, and if they do that, any amount of area, if they do that, then nothing is required of them. However, what we've been doing is that we still ask them to direct that flow to grass areas or definitely away from the neighbor's property unless the property is already draining that way. If it's sloped that way, it's going to be hard for me to ask them to put a dike in the middle between the two properties. So we still try and maintain the existing lay of the ground as far as drainage, but if it's going to be something obnoxiously, maybe they're going to be paving everything and put underground detention, well, we still take into consideration the fact that we don't want them to be affecting the neighboring properties and so forth. So there's a lot of conversations between the city and the developer before they even get a building permit approved.
And again, acknowledging that there's definitely issues going on here, do you feel confident that changing the zoning, which is the specific thing that we're discussing tonight, won't make those issues worse?
Honestly, I don't think changing zoning will make it worse, because right now they could build commercial, and the commercial would more than likely be something that either has more concrete or more impervious area than the apartments, or it would be similar. So the zoning, I mean, at the end of the day, the zoning doesn't do anything to it. Yeah, it allows people to build it, but it's going to be land that would be utilized. But at the same time, I mean, like Mr. Bear said, he could go there tomorrow morning and want to put a big building in there, and it's already it's not a permitted use, so we would actually just have to go through the same process with them. And it could end up being a building with more concrete, a larger building, and larger impact on the neighbors.
Council, other questions?
Jose, I have a question for you too. Now, if you don't believe that, because you're an engineer, I'm obviously not, so you know more about this than I do. Do you honestly think that that with an apartment building there, would that not make the matter that's already existing worse?
I don't think it's going to matter if it's an apartment building or if it's going to be a business. Any new construction will affect the neighborhood, I guess. So again, whether it's an apartment or a Casey's that goes there, it won't matter.
So if that's the case, because you're an engineer, I'm obviously not, what can we do to help out the homeowners that have this problem already? Because I mean, it's no secret that there's already a problem. So what can we do? What can you do as an engineer to help deter some of the water, help the water vanish? Obviously there's a high water table. I mean, that's no secret, but water has to go somewhere. So where should the water go?
Well, this one might be a little bit difficult to see, but and it is going to be difficult. Well, essentially the water right now is actually, like everybody has been saying, at the end of the day, it gets collected around this neighborhood and it will go over to Highway 50 right here. What happens is that the ditch itself, whenever it's full of water, then that water backs into all of the pipes that go into the ditch. So I already have the capacity filled within that pipe or that system. I already have that capacity taken over by the ditch water backing into the system. So whatever water falls on the ground, street, rain, whatever it might be, turn a hose on. It doesn't go, it goes into the pipe, but it can't just flow into the ditch because the ditch is already right there. So essentially the ditch is in their backyard to some degree. So then what happens is that water puddles in that swale, goes into the pipe however it can, and then you either get enough head pressure to push some of that pipe out, which is going to be pretty hard considering the ditch is pretty huge. There's a lot of volume there. It's hard for me to, blow through a 55-gallon barrel with a straw. Or it's just going to soak into the ground, which makes some of the issues a little bit worse, and so it's not an easy fix. I can't just put a 6-foot pipe in there, assuming that that's going to drain everything, because guess what? That 6-foot pipe is still going to have to go to the ditch. So now what I have is the 6-foot pipe full of ditch water. So at the end of the day, if I want to really solve this, I have to start at the ditch. Now, putting a retention pond in there will make it better because some of that water, whether it backs from the ditch or drains into it from any rainstorm event, will sit at the ditch. And it's not going to sit there for 3 weeks or anything like that. It should sit there for at the most a day. And it's all going to depend on how empty the ditch is. So mosquitoes issues, yeah, you could have that, but you already have that because guess what? The pipe is full of water, like they already said. So whatever mosquitoes you think you have, you already have them. The pond is supposed to be kind of like a safety valve. I don't know how else to put it. It's just provides some relief. And it's only for the new construction, new development.
So I guess also another question as well is if this pipe is 12 inches,
yep.
How can I phrase this? If there's a concrete channel, would that hold more water then to help the water dissipate better? Or, because I'm really concerned for these folks that have this water, and I'm really nervous that more development, whether it be apartments or whatnot, would contribute to this problem.
If I have an open channel, let's take the pipe out, just have an open channel, concrete channel. What that's going to do is it's going to get the water from point A to point B faster, and that's it. So yeah, it'll be able to carry more water, but it's essentially just moving it quicker. Imagine a highway. The interstate, yeah, carries a lot of vehicles, but it's also, you're going 80 miles an hour as opposed to in town where you're going 20. So it moves faster from point A to point B. Now the problem that you're gonna be having is that once it gets to Alumni, well, now you still have the same issue. You just got to it quicker. Now you have all of that water that you moved there in 2 minutes instead of 10 minutes maybe before. It all got there at the same time, and the system already can't handle it. So what you did by doing that is you more than likely created the issue at Alumni and Cottage worse, because the system is already not capable of handling the original storm, I guess, that you had. Again, drainage is not an easy thing. There's people that have PhDs just in hydrology, and that's what we're talking about.
Would it be possible for you to come up with some different drainage ideas, since it's not, because you just said that it wasn't so easy? Could you come up with some ideas for us to help us help the citizens in that area? What should they do with the water? Can you?
I guess, are you asking for the new development or the existing?
Both.
Okay, the new development, they will actually be coming up with something.
Okay.
For the existing, I guess I can see if we can come up with something. I mean, that stuff was looks quite extensively back in the mid-'90s and late 90s, I guess, as far as the construction of the 12-inch. So I don't know. One of the things that we're actually going to be looking at is probably by the end of the month, for sure, we're actually going to go over there and we're going to clean the pipe. Whoever owns the pipe, we're going to go and clean it. And after we clean it, then we're going to be able to ascertain a little bit better what the condition of the pipe is. And then from that point, then we can look at it. I mean, one thing to keep in mind is that, yes, there are problems there. I have no issues with it, and I completely agree with it. But the fact that the pipe was constructed in 96 or around that time, we don't have any, between that time and the recent, the present, I guess, we haven't had really too many complaints as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know. So that leads me to think that the pipe is either plugged somewhere, or that maybe collapsed, and maybe we just need to fix a couple sections of it. I'm not sure. Maybe. I don't think we've had that much development in that area since 96 either. So there's some things that we need to look at before we go there and say we need to rip out everybody's backyards and do something completely drastic. But yeah, I mean, we can certainly look into something.
Okay, because I know that I live on a steep hill. I'm one of the higher houses of this particular neighborhood, and luckily for us, we had an inheritance that we could actually waterproof our basement, because we get it too, or we got it to, not to their extent, which my heart goes out to them, but just something needs to be just to be figured out. There needs to be a plan in place that we can help alleviate this water.
Okay, are there other council persons? Yes, Catherine. Thank you.
I'll say the new criteria you speak of from 2015 about the 50% impervious or not. The current properties that are there that seem to be causing some of the drainage problems, how do they measure up to those criteria?
I haven't looked at it. I mean, just from looking at the aerial, it looks like they would be over that 50%. But I would say that, and this is just from me briefly going there after speaking with Mr. McDonald, it seems like a large issue is actually the way that the parking lots are sloped. It looks like a big chunk of it is actually flowing to the west. So whenever it rains, again, like at the concrete channel, all that water just zooms right into some of their backyards. So yeah, I mean, that is an issue. And that's something that even now we have actually been trying to address with some of the neighbors and some of the, not at this neighborhood, but in other parts of town with new construction, as far as the grading of the lots and so forth. But that's a big issue here. And I don't know if it's going to be something as easy as putting, some curb and gutter there to kind of just stop it, or at least put an obstacle in front of it. I don't know if it's, putting a berm by Mr. McDonald, and I'm just using his as an example, but at his property, and then the combination of the curb and the berm, I don't know. There's a lot of different possibilities or issues that you might actually be looking at, but.
And can I ask a follow-up question to that? If these properties, maybe more for John, but if these properties are not conforming to the 50% impervious requirements, and if they were to have been constructed now, they would require some kind of runoff pond or something on the property. That's not the name for it.
Okay.
But do we have any influence over that if they were to make changes to those properties or something like that?
Probably the only thing, and Jose, clarify if I don't state this correctly, probably the only thing that would happen is if they were going to rip up that parking lot and construct a new parking lot, we would work with them to make sure that that flows or is tilted differently. If they were to, and I don't physically believe there's room, but if they were to add another building in there, if there's space for that, or tear down a building and build a new one, we'd work with them on that sort of thing. But otherwise, unless you think anything else, Jose, those would probably be the things that would trigger us to, if you will, force them to alter their drainage flow.
Yeah, and the criteria, the way it was adopted by the council in a roundabout way, it actually pretty much puts a date, so we can't do anything retroactively before April 6, 2015, but anything after that day, then we can go ahead with new construction and so forth. But anything before that, then we kind of just let them be. Otherwise, there would be, this would not even be probably the top mark, I guess, to be honest with you. There's a lot of other issues in town that affect a lot of people, drainage-wise.
Well, I'd like to bring us back to what the issue is, and that is this other property. And I'm very sympathetic to the homeowners that have issues the way they are right now. I'm comfortable that your office has done the research necessary to indicate that the new project should not adversely affect the current people. Having said that, I wish there was something we could do, and hopefully your cleaning out of the pipe might alleviate some of the issue that the McDonald's and others are having there. But I think the issue before us is, are the guidelines or are the criteria in place for a new position or new zoning that will not impact the current people? And to me, that's the key issue. Further discussion from council. Tom, please.
Steve got his hand up a little bit. Well, I guess I just have one question, if I
Certainly.
Do we have anything in our ordinance, our building ordinances, that looks at the land itself as, this seems like we're almost building in a wetland, and maybe that's not wise. So is there anything in any ordinance that we have that looks at the quality of the land, and instead of, the water drainage itself, which I know is part of it, but
We don't. As far as the drainage quality of the land, let's say, we don't have anything necessarily that looks at it. The only time that we truly look at it is if it's a wetland, then we do require them to actually go and talk to the Corps of Engineers and give us a letter, essentially a certificate saying that they have permission to remove that wetland. Maybe they have to mitigate it or whatever the case. But we don't have anything right now that says this property that we're planning on rezoning should not be built on because the land is saturated. We don't have that now.
is there anything that you know of, John, in the thing that talks about like a saturation level of the land?
I don't know if to be honest with you, a lot of the land in Vermillion will be saturated. because it's clay, and the clay is going to soak up that water, and it's going to expand, and it's going to shrink, and it's...
So you're saying this land isn't unusual for
Vermillion?
For Vermillion.
No. It might be worse off than some areas, but at the end of the day, no, it's not that unusual.
Okay. Thank you.
Donovan, go ahead. You might not be.
A couple of things. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody in their input from Cottage, because prior to that, nobody would even take ownership for the 24-inch pipe. And we've looked into that and established ownership. While it's not totally the city, we are going to do something to try to remedy a possible leakage there. The other two questions I have is, or not questions, but statements. What's in front of us right now is whether we should zone this R3 or not. I really feel personally that it's not going to make an impact as far as the water, additional flooding, but it will make an impact to the people that already own the property and the fact that they couldn't recover if they had any kind of a problem. And that wouldn't be fair to them either as far as damage to the existing property because it is not R3. Okay, but the question I have for you, Jose, is that if a new place was put in there and you say it would probably require a retention pond, do we specify how big the retention pond is, or can we?
The way that we specify, they have to follow the criteria, and depending on how much impervious area, then that decides the size of the pond itself.
Is the pond always below the surface, or can it be raised?
Can it be raised?
In other words, do you have
yes, we could raise it, but it's not required. It depends on what type of, we're actually calling for a detention pond. So there's a difference between retention and detention. We're actually just going to be detaining the water and then sending it out on its way after some time.
Jose, what I'm leading up to is, can we make it big enough that it would hold more than normal?
We could, but then what you're going to be getting into is that you're asking this property owner to utilize his land for a regional pond.
Yes.
But I don't know if, at that point, I would have to be purchasing the property from the property owner to be putting that regional pond in there, because that's not necessarily what he's going to be wanting to do with his land.
So in other words, he has to take care of his land and his land only.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's,
okay, I'm asking.
Yeah, it would be like me going to your land and wanting to put a pond in your backyard.
I understand.
Yeah.
The second thing is, I understand that, John helped me with this, that the South Dakota Department of Transportation is asking to look at Highway 50 and what needs to be done, and that's in July they're having a meeting. Is that right, John?
Yes. We found out at this point because they asked to use the council chambers for their meeting room. And so, I guess I look at some of the discussion tonight, and apologize, Mayor, it's maybe a little bit off the zoning topic, but I look at what are the things that we can do now today with the situation we have, and one of those is, as Jose referenced, it's been unclear whose responsibility it is to maintain this pipe. The city paid 20% of the cost when it was originally constructed in the late 90s. The other two apartment complex owners paid the remaining 80%. Is it our pipe or not? But nonetheless, Mr. Bear, I guess I'm letting you know that we are going to be cleaning that pipe to try to maximize that 12-inch pipe, which goes from Alumni south, to make the best use of one of the assets that we do have. Another one is that we may visit with Mr. Bear with respect to where, when they clear those apartment parking lots, where they stack the snow at in those piles, so that, yes, the drain is meant to help drain that water off there, but if the drain is covered with snow, that makes it a little bit more difficult for it to drain. So we will probably be in contact with you and the other property owner in that. The third item that we can do with the resources that we have and the time period we're in is how do we make this better, and it is, I think we referenced earlier, long-term. And on Tuesday, July 25th, in the meeting in this council chambers, the DOT is going to have a meeting between 4 and 7:30. We don't know the format of their meeting yet, whether it's an open house, whether it's they take comments, whether they have plans. We don't know that yet. We only know they're coming here because they asked to reserve the room to use it. But they are going to be talking about Highway 50 drainage and the reconstruction of Highway 50, often referred to as the bypass here in the community. As they do that, that's the time when we should really push them as a community to address the storm drainage along 50. They're going to be tearing it up. There's not too many, if you will, urban sections of highway, as we have now, that have a curb and gutter. So more than likely, they're going to be removing that curb and doing more of a shoulder type approach, hopefully wider turn lanes, some things like that. But they're going to be here. We're going to have their attention as a community, as a council. This would be a great time to let DOT know that we'd like to see you while you're here on that project, address address that ditch for all of us in the long term. So, long answer to your question, Mr. Holland. I'm sorry.
July what?
That's Tuesday, July 25th. It's an open meeting, as far as we know. I guess I just made it known.
You just opened it.
As far as we know, it's an open meeting in the council chambers from 4 to 7:30 that night.
Thank you, John.
One other quick thing, John, they're talking about what they want to do, but they're scheduled to do the work in 2020,
2021, I think it's the date.
2021?
Yeah.
Those are the things that we hopefully will learn that way through these meetings. These processes take time as they develop their plans, secure the funding, and schedule it.
I know it's a little bit fluid as far as that date, and part of that is because although they have a good solid idea of what they want to do with the highway, they're still talking amongst their departments as far as what that final look of the highway will be. So
once again, the original thing is do we change it to R3? I don't think that's an issue. I think we need to do that to make it fair to the current owners in that property, and it won't affect, should not affect or will not affect additional flooding problems or make them worse. And short term, we're going to fix a pipe that may be plugged. Long term, we've really got to work with the Department of Transportation to say, fix the drainage along Highway 50. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say that's fair.
Thank you.
Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jose, I want you to first know we appreciate the professionalism on the staff, you and your predecessors. But there are some of us who, and I only see one face old enough in this audience to remember, and I've said this before, it indeed has historically and common knowledge been a wetlands out there. To the point where there are people who've hunted ducks along what is now the Highway 50 bypass, which still has rushes and waterfall now and then too. That is a state issue, is that correct?
Yeah, the highway is a state issue.
And that's really like the narrow bottleneck part of the funnel where all of this water is flowing into, and until that gets addressed, this other discussion is kind of a tentative thing depending on the weather. I mean, how many detention ponds would it take to remake a wetland?
It depends on the ratio that they're wanting you to mitigate, but yeah.
So again, I appreciate your professionalism and that of your predecessors, but you have to wonder, is this an area that should have been developed in the first place, given the water table being so high out there too. And we do have water experts through the university, if nothing else, to talk to. But you made the comment, any new construction is going to have an effect. So my question has to be, what if we have no new construction for the time being until we find out what the state's going to plan and how they're going to solve this for the community of Vermillion since the highway goes through here? Does that sound like a good strategy, or would you still recommend passing this?
Well, you won't be able, by not passing the rezone, you're not necessarily going to be stopping any development from occurring there. You're going to be stopping the R3 development from occurring there. Right. But again, that doesn't say that somebody couldn't build a commercial building in there as long as it's a permitted use.
And you said any new construction is going to cause problems.
Yep. Yeah. It's going to cause some issues, yes.
I'd really like to just wait and see what happens with the state, unless there's a real burning issue on this. I don't know if there is, Mr. Bear.
I'd say, I guess.
Please. Sorry, everybody.
You know, I think it's been brought up several times here. The rezoning of it is not going to change I sympathize with these people with the drainage issues, and I would definitely look at if we need to, snow removal wise, I could direct my guys better. We can help with that. That doesn't stop a rain. I can't stop a 2-inch rain, and I can't stop what happens when that happens. And I can't stop the water level. I can't stop any of it. I didn't build these apartments.
Right. Okay, so
if you look at some of the ones that I have built,
go ahead and
but yes, what we are looking at doing is we have somebody that is very interested, somebody that has built several apartments in this town that's looking at purchasing the land from us, that piece of land. He knows very, very well the rules and what you guys expect. And I believe, as far as I know, he's always respected those rules, and he always follows through with everything, obviously, because he continues to build in this town.
Thank you. I think you've answered my question.
But yes, so we are looking at maybe doing something in the near future. But we would definitely, whether it be me or the future person, would take in very consideration of the drainage issues and not make, we would do probably anything in our ability to not make them worse. If anything, help them, if at all possible. So.
Thank you. I think.
Appreciate it.
Are there other questions from the council? Again, I'd like to bring us back to what the issue is, and that's the rezoning of a piece of property. Steve?
Can I ask permission of the council to recognize Glenn McConnell since he's standing up? I have another question for Jose.
Wait a minute, just a minute, Glenn. Is that all right with the council? Okay, Glenn, please.
Thank you. I just have another question for Jose, because when I was told about our drainage issues out here, that I was also informed that out in the middle of Cottage Street, there's a hole in the middle of the sanitary sewer line. Is that right?
Yeah, we have a manhole on one of our one of the manholes, sanitary sewer, and yeah, this manhole has a hole in it.
And at that time that I met with you, you told me that my water problem would be worse if it was not for the hole in that sanitary water line.
Sure it is, or it would be.
So the problems I've got right now could be a lot worse than they are if it wasn't for the hole out there. I mean, they're letting the commercial property drain into the residential area. That little manhole cover can't cover it. I mean, every time it's mowed, it's covered with grass. In the wintertime, it's covered with snow. And if there wasn't a hole in the sanitary sewer line, I'd have more water than I have right now. And the city has yet to fix that. The city is the one, the previous city engineer is the one that allowed the people to build those apartments with no drainage system in place. In speaking with Jose, this 12-inch pipe that we're talking about was an afterthought after the apartments were built. And we're left to deal with the problem. And I mean, we say that we haven't had any complaints, but yet I have been to the city. My neighbors have been. They said, put in drain tile. That's $3,000, $4,000. I don't have that money. This problem was created by the city okaying these apartment complex with no drainage system in place, and second of all, letting them slope right into the residential area. I need help. I mean, this is not my doing. When I bought that, it was a field. I didn't have water issues until that apartment complex was built and they sloped that water in my backyard. And there's no curb and gutter on it. So it's a tidal wave coming out there. It looked like Falls Park. It took my sump pump hose and put it 20 feet over behind my apple tree. That's the volume of water that's coming off that apartment complex. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, I think we're still dealing with two separate issues. And I think the one we should be directing our attention to is the ordinance as has been presented to us. And I don't know how much more discussion we need on this from the council. And I'd like to see us move forward. Steve, please.
I would move approval of the proposed ordinance, and I think everybody on the council would agree that the issues that have been expressed tonight are absolutely a concern, and would, certainly I think everyone would direct the staff to do what they can to alleviate those, and it sounds like that is in the plan. Yeah, maybe it can be part of the capital improvement plan. But I'm still, because I agree with most of what the council has said, that the rezoning is not necessarily going to exacerbate the problem, that I would move forward.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Just a quick question, if I might, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Jose, is R3 going to just bring more people, potentially, more water flow in whichever pipeline? I mean, what are the effects of changing the zoning to this current water problem? No pun intended.
Besides the drainage issues that you may have, all the other infrastructure. No, yeah, besides the drainage issue, as far as the storm drainage, all of the other infrastructure, water and sanitary, has already been built in that location. Whether it was sized appropriately, I couldn't tell you, but I really think, I'm pretty sure that it's sized more than large enough for this. If I can show you my bat map again. This red line that you see here is red in my map. That's actually the sanitary sewer. And that there is actually the high point, you could say, on the whole system on that line. And that line drains all the way to Main Lift 1, which is below the bluff by Cotton Park. So all of that water, all of that sewage should be fine. I mean, if that line backs up right there, it's either because the line is plugged with something or the sewage backed all the way up there. And if that backs up all the way up that bluff and up the hill and up Dakota Street to that point, there's a lot of issues. I mean, this year is going to be the least of my concerns at that point. But I guess short and sweet, yeah, it should be fine. You're talking about possibly 40 people moving to this neighborhood. If those apartments were to be built, I'm pretty sure that the system can handle 40 people.
Thank you for your candor.
Other comments? We have a motion and a second on the floor. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Roll call, please. All results are yes 5, no 4. Motion passes. Thank you all. Thank you all for your input, and hopefully we'll move forward and improve things for both parties. Next, we have new business. Item A is, no, I'm sorry, 7A, we have old business, excuse me. Second reading of ordinance 1355 to amend Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 155, Zoning Regulations, Section 155.075A, Telecommunication Tower, Antenna Support Structures, and Wireless Communication Facilities to add an exception allowing the City Council to consider the construction of stealth/camouflage towers within 300 feet of residential zoning or uses. And Jose, please.
Thanks. The former water tower located near the intersection of Bloomingdale and Market Streets had cell company equipment located on it. Shortly after the city notified the incumbent companies that their equipment located on the tower needed to be removed as the tower was to be taken down, inquiries were made to locate a tower on the site. The city worked with one company which had equipment on the Bloomingdale and Market Street tower to construct a tower near the southwest corner of the outdoor arena at the fairgrounds. The process for this company involved obtaining a variance from the City Council as options to locate a tower were limited. Inquiries continued to be made about locating telecommunication towers closer to the populated areas as the demand for data needs escalated. Telecommunication towers are only allowed on properties zoned central business, general industrial, or heavy industrial. Also, the existing zoning ordinance does not allow for a telecommunications cell tower to be constructed within 300 feet of a residential zone or use. With the current code requirements and zoning makeup of the community, there may not be any options to locate telecommunication towers south of the Cherry Street corridor. A telecommunications tower company representative approached the city about creating an exception to the 300-foot proximity rule to residential zoning or uses for stealth towers. Stealth camouflage towers are constructed to look like something else, for example, an evergreen, a water tower, flagpole. At the noon meeting on February 6, 2017, the City Council requested the Policies and Procedures Committee to review the company's request and report back. The Policy and Procedures Committee met with a cell tower representative and directed staff to draft an ordinance that provides for an exception to the current zoning ordinance requirements for discussion and consideration. For discussion purposes and additional background to more fully consider the option, city staff also developed a draft application that might be used if the ordinance is adopted. The proposed amendment establishes a process to notify neighbors of a hearing. The hearing would be for the City Council to consider and approve a specific design for a location. After approval of a specific design, the applicant would still need to obtain a conditional use permit from the Planning Commission, as is required for the placement of any telecommunications tower. On April 17, 2017, the City Council received reports from the Policies and Procedures Committee and recommended acceptance, as the proposed language would amend the zoning code. An ordinance first went to the Planning Commission for consideration. At the Planning Commission, the item was reviewed during their May 8th meeting. At that meeting, the Planning Commission recommended approval with a 5-2 vote. Some members of the Planning Commission were concerned that the Planning Commission would be obligated to grant a conditional use permit after the City Council had approved the exception to the distance by approving a specific design. Some neighbors of the Market and Bloomingdale property attended the Planning Commission meeting and expressed concern about telecommunications towers at this location. The proposed ordinance would apply to all central business, general industrial, and heavy industrial zone land in the city, and not just to a single property. The proposed zoning districts, which would allow for the construction of a telecommunications tower, are not proposed to change with the attached ordinance. The ordinance would only allow the construction of stealth camouflage towers in the same 4 zoning districts where they are currently allowed. The City Council held the first reading of the ordinance at the May 15th meeting. At that meeting, no audience comments were offered in opposition to the proposed ordinance. However, concerns were expressed by a City Council member with regard to the proximity of one potential location to a residential historic district and possible health effects caused by telecommunication towers. The second reading was held on June 5th. At that meeting, the Council chose to table the item until answers from the public could be answered by telecommunications tower representatives. There was no tower representative present at the June 5th meeting. Every location in one of the 4 allowable zoning districts for tower construction within 300 feet of residential zoning or uses may not be feasible. The proposed ordinance will provide the City Council and community the opportunity to make an exception in a location that makes sense and where the right design can be determined. The proposed ordinance does not approve a design or location for any specific telecommunications tower. The proposed ordinance would help locate an aesthetically acceptable tower via a public hearing in a location that is closer to where large numbers of people are located, where utilizing the data provided through the system. The city's cost at this point would be the publication of the ordinance. Administration recommends adoption of the second reading of Ordinance 1355 to add an exception allowing the City Council to consider aesthetics of stealth camouflage towers within 300 feet of residential zoning or uses. A roll call vote is required, this being the second reading.
Thank you, Jose. And I'd like to remind our audience that this is not a site-specific situation. This is allowing the city to move forward with something less than a 300-foot distance from residential. It does not specify the location. So the issue before us is if the city will have the opportunity or the authority to reduce the distance from 300 feet to something less than 300 feet. So with that in mind, any comments from the public regarding this issue, please? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the comment.
We felt there were a number of questions presented last time that the council should find answers.
I think that's fair. Could we have the representative? Were you able to get the comments and questions?
Good evening. Once again, I'm Kurt Walter. I do represent Verizon Wireless. I wasn't able to be here at the last meeting. I was on vacation, grandchildren, and a daughter's wedding reception. So I apologize for that. I finally got back to the office last week. John explained some of the questions that you guys had. Explained to John that it's going to take a while to gather all that information up. I got back on Thursday, and to have it all ready by today wasn't possible. John did ask me to see if I could be here tonight just to answer any particular questions. We can come up with any documents you guys feel necessary. I wasn't here for the hearing 2 weeks ago, so I wasn't privy to all the specific questions. Mr. Prescott did give me an overview of what some of the information was. But if you want site-specific stuff like that,
Well, one of the
usually-
questions that was raised was noise, and we have 2 towers in the city limits, well, 3. One over by the 4-H and one out by Best Western. And I can just comment for people that were concerned about noise, I had to get within about 10 feet before I could hear any noise, and that was the sound of an air conditioner.
Yeah,
So,
the tower itself doesn't make any noise.
No, that's what I said, it was an air conditioner that was running.
Yeah, it's the new equipment that Verizon has. The one by the Best Western is an old big shelter, and they have 2 commercial air conditioners off the back of that to cool the computer systems inside. The new system that Verizon has are outdoor cabinets. I believe they have smaller air conditioners, so it would even be less noise than that. But yes, there is air conditioners to cool our computers, but the tower itself doesn't make any noise.
Another question, as I recall, and I don't have the list in front of me, was radiation. Problems with radiation.
Yeah, a lot of you can go online and find anything you really want for or against. We take our information from the FCC. Some of that stuff has been provided to you guys in the past. The FCC, United States government, the American Cancer Society all say that, there's no conclusive evidence, anything like that. I'm paraphrasing. I mean, I'm not a doctor or anything.
I'm just remembering a few of the questions.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
So there doesn't seem to be, you can find whatever you want on the internet, and there are some studies in Europe that say the same thing. There are some studies that say other things. So,
Jack, I think our tabling last time was sort of predicated on the idea that we would get some pretty specific questions answered. So rather than trying to remember off the top of our head the questions that we had, I wonder if we need a little more time to formally assemble those questions and also give Verizon then a chance to answer them, because it doesn't seem like it's very fair to the people who ask the questions to just try and come up with them and maybe miss them, and it's also not very fair to the gentleman here to make him answer things off the top of his head that he doesn't necessarily have in front of him. And so I wonder if we maybe just need a little more time again on this, because what we thought would happen maybe in the 2 weeks between just hasn't had a chance to happen.
yeah, what I've been doing this for 20 years now. Each municipality is a little different, mostly the same, protecting the citizens of the community in which what you're supposed to be doing. Usually the questions that are specific towards radiation, collapse of towers, all the information that I've been aware of so far are usually handled in the site-specific part of it when we're actually applying for a conditional use permit. We're going here on this parcel, we're going to be 20 feet from this line, 50 feet from that line, that kind of stuff. We can have, at that point, the engineer who's going to build the tower write you a statement saying, I'm building the tower, I'm putting my name on it, this is how it's going to, how it's engineered. We can get into the actual engineer of how it fits into the Verizon system. We can get into that once we have a site-specific. The information that I've been requested is usually handled on that situation. The ordinance revision for this exception states that this, for us to come to you with an exception for the setbacks, that we'd have to fill out a form from the city. In that form, you can add those site-specific things and take care of most of it, when we get to that point.
Rich?
I did review all the questions, and almost all of them were site-specific. Excuse me, except with one, and that was the R2. One was the noise issue, and the second was traffic. Once this is constructed, what do you expect for traffic going to that tower from Verizon?
During the construction period, there will be traffic.
Sure.
There'll be, trucks and construction type stuff. Once it's built and online, there's a little truck that gets there maybe once a month. checking on things. If something breaks down in the middle of the night, they'll come and fix something or during the day, but it's typically not more than once or twice a month that a general SUV or a pickup truck will visit it. So it's not.
The other questions, while valid questions, would be resolved, I think, when they did the conditional use permit, because that would be, once again, site-specific. But the rest of the questions, except for the noise and the traffic, I believe were, in fact, site-specific.
Okay, Kelsey, you next. Catherine, okay.
Kurt, thanks for being here, and sorry if you didn't have a lot of time to put something together. I'm fine to leave this on the table until we do get a more fulfilling answer to some of the questions, but I would say that to me, I'm kind of seeing two issues here. One of them is sort of the site-specific how type questions of how would a tower work and how tall would it be and what would it look like and how far away would it be, and those are how questions. But the question I really wanted answered before I would feel comfortable voting on this is a why question, and that relates more to why is a tower necessary in our community? Why does it need to be in this general location versus another general location in town? What is it that it would accomplish in that location that it wouldn't accomplish if it were in another location? What is the benefit of getting a tower now? So what is the need that is being met by this tower, and what will the need be and continue to be if there isn't a tower? And I think it would help the council make a more informed decision. A tower near a residential area, of course, isn't ideal, but if that's the only place that it can go and meet the need, then that's a more persuasive argument than, than not having that information. And if it would meet 80% of the need to put it there versus putting it somewhere else that is zoned appropriately, then it would only meet 30% of the need, that's a more persuasive argument than either place would meet 80%. So I think what would help me is to have a better understanding of what the need is in the city and some potential ways of rectifying that need. And I'm fine if you can't present that information to us tonight, but you should let us know if you can, and we can leave it on the table or take it off.
Yes, no, I'm not able to present anything better than what I've already presented. Some of the general handouts that I have kind of deal with that. Verizon basically looks into, we've got a couple sites in town. They're going to reach capacity pretty soon. They usually look 2 to 3 years out. It takes that long sometimes to build a new tower. They don't ever want to meet capacity because then you're going to get dropped calls. You're going to have your data that's coming over the wireless that you're downloading a file. It's going to be dropped completely. So we're not going to get to that point. But what I mentioned to John was that we could have this here for probably your second. Give us a month and we can put up something good. It takes several different departments to come up with all of these information that you want, and we want to make sure it's presented properly and adequately and accurately. And so if you give us a month, we'll have that back to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Walter, thanks for being here. I appreciate it, and I completely understand why you couldn't make it last time, and congratulations on the wedding.
Thank you.
That's good news. Some of the questions I have just been raised, and I appreciate it, and I stand with you on that approach. And this might be a question for Mr. Prescott or Mr. Dominguez, are there other areas near these 4 central business, general industrial, heavy industrial, that are residential within 300 feet? Are there other options? I know it's not site-specific, but the ordinance is specific to residential zoning and uses. So are there other options in terms of that description?
Did you say within 300 feet?
Well, that would require an exception, this ordinance amendment. Do we have others in town?
Absolutely, and that's, I guess maybe I'll come around here, Kurt, sorry to...
It's a long walk.
Yeah, close to getting there. So anytime, what colors, how it looks there, but when you see the GB, for example, the Cherry Street corridor, anything that's going to have an R next to it, those are areas where you would have the same sort of situation, where you have the general business that's abutting residential, you're going to have the same issue. And that's what was kind of brought out in the memo. Sorry. Did all that.
You don't have to repeat it.
I thought it was pretty good. One of the challenges that I think we have as a community is we have our zoning limited to those 4 classifications: heavy industrial and general industrial, central business district, and general business. Those are the 4 areas where our community allows a tower to go. So those are, and I would submit that central business district, the entire central business district is within 300 feet of a residential zone or use with the number of upstairs apartments. It's just the smallness of that district in terms of its physical size. So basically, as a community, all of our towers, I would say, are going to be limited to being Cherry Street corridor or north. That's not necessarily where our people gather or where we have the concentration of people as much. So I do think as a community, that's an issue that we have potentially with our zoning code. So that's the long answer to your question, but absolutely, anytime you see that general business next to anything within our designation, we'd have that same scenario.
As far as our city limits go?
Inside the city limits,
right.
Yes, which is...
Okay. So I guess that, and I appreciate that, thank you. Does Verizon feel there are no other options to a residential area near one of these?
Verizon hires me when they have work, and I do all the legwork, coming here, knocking on everybody's doors. We came to the city because of the old water tower was there. We said, hey, what do you think? So we did make a formal proposal in January about it. That's how this all got to here. What we will do is have the actual engineer that designs the entire state of South Dakota. We'll have him as provide a statement here, or possibly, show up in person to kind of explain it. Thing with engineers and a microphone, they talk stuff that that I don't.
I used to hold an FCC license. I know what you're talking about.
So yes, we can. I don't want to get into that. I'll have the engineer provide something that's accurate and not just me in general.
Okay. But as far as perhaps this general area, you wouldn't be precluded, would you?
Can have the overhead again?
Because
we currently have, this is the tower behind the Best Western over in this general area.
Yep, that one would be over here somewhere.
Okay. So over here, what we're trying to do, the specific of this is to get more coverage. Well, you can go anywhere in town and get good coverage. I mean, I can drive through every street in town and get 2 or 3 bars. So the coverage isn't the idea, it's the capacity of what the tower can handle.
Right.
We've got a spot here, we've got a spot here, and I believe we're on the tower at the college. What we're trying to do is offload what current traffic over here, and also try to help get into the residential area down here a little bit more. There's been some comments, what if we just build something, below the bluff? It's a line of sight thing. So,
right. You want height.
Really tall
that.
tower, and then it's got to be lit and all that other stuff. We'd like to stay away from that, but right now, the way it sits, we're precluded from going pretty much anywhere over here. So we can't get to where the people are at this point. But I will have the actual engineer.
This bluff is the South Dakota side of the ancient riverbed, and the Nebraska Hills are the other side. I never thought I'd say that publicly. It's the thing I learned from like a grandfather, but...
we had a similar problem in Yankton. We had to build on the Nebraska side to...
Up on the cliffs.
To get into the...
Have you looked at buildings, on top of buildings in the area downtown or area that are not near residences?
Yeah, they're not tall enough to do anything. We have looked at that.
What's the pleasure of the council?
I'd just like to say again that I agree, and I'm really sorry we didn't provide a list of questions for you to take to your offices.
We did, but he hasn't had the opportunity to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got to it Thursday, and there's no way I could get it. And since this was already published, I thought it would be, we thought it would be appropriate for me to at least come in here and explain.
Rich?
Well, what was Kathy's requested table?
Just to leave it on the table. I mean, do we have to make a motion to do that?
Yeah. Since we had said we were going to bring it off tonight, Jim, what's our...
I think you have to table it again.
Okay.
Move to leave it on the table.
Second.
Is there a date specific, or just leave it on the table?
Until he can return with the presentation.
If I may.
Go ahead.
So I don't anticipate July 3rd is what you're thinking. The council will be here that
Do you
night,
have
but
another
I'm just
wedding?
checking. Would July 17th, that would be the second meeting in July. That's roughly a month minus 2 days. Otherwise, then it would be in August. So I guess, what do you feel would be, so that we can plan for the council and the public, what the date is, or will you let...
We'll push our engineers and everybody for that second meeting in July.
Okay, and I guess I would ask that if you cannot make the July 17th meeting, would you let us know prior to the 3rd of July so we could announce it at the meeting that night?
Yes.
Okay. That way we can let people know what's going on.
Okay, there's a motion to leave it on the table, but not date specific. Okay, and there was a second?
I seconded the motion.
Okay, any further discussion?
I simply feel the ordinance we have in place is sufficient, and...
Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you for coming to our meeting. Under new business, item A, fireworks display permit for July 4th, 2017 for the Vermillion Chamber of Commerce. Mike, please.
The Vermillion Chamber and Development Company is requesting City Council approval for a fireworks public display to be held on July 4th. Display is planned to begin around 10 p.m. and will discharge from the field east of Polaris and west of Casey's, north of Bauer Street. Tom Taylor and James Taylor will be conducting the show. This permit request is similar to prior years. A copy of the permit application, site plan, and approved site plan from the fire chief are attached. Matt Taggart with the police department has met with Mr. Taylor to review the site. Administration recommend the city council authorize the mayor to sign the fireworks public display permit for the Vermillion Chamber and Development Company to be held on July 4th.
Is it the contingent upon permit application being signed? That has been signed?
Yes, that has been signed. He was in today and signed it.
Council?
Move approval.
Motion is second to approve the fireworks display for July 4th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item B, appointment to fill Planning Commission terms. We have four positions to fill. And I'm recommending to the council that we reappoint Matt Fairholm, Robert Euler, and Robert Iverson, and to fill the other one, Howard Wilson. And that's my recommendation to the council. Motion is second to approve the appointments to fill the Planning Commission terms. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item C is Vermillion Housing Authority Board appointment. One person applied, and that person is Craig DeVelder, who has been on the board, so it's a reappointment, and that's my recommendation to the council.
Move approval.
Motion is second to approve Craig DeVelder. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item D, resolution for airport grant offer for apron reconstruction project. Jose, please.
Thanks. The existing capital improvement plan for the airport calls for the reconstruction of the general aviation apron. The apron is located south of the terminal building. This is essentially where the planes park, for lack of a better term. Additionally, the project will also include the replacement of the poppy lights, which are the precision approach path indicator lights, which help airplanes land correctly, I guess, at the airport.
Doesn't if they're too low or too high.
It gives them the right angle. The grant application will commence the process required by the FAA to get funding for the project. The city already has the local funding reserved. However, the paperwork has to be completed in order for the city to receive the share being held by the FAA. To keep the project moving forward at a quick pace, staff is asking that the city council also allow the mayor to sign any future documents regarding this project. At this point, it's expected that the mayor will have to sign the actual grant offer, the contract with the low bidder, and any closeout documents after the project is completed. At this point, the cost of the project has mainly been just engineering, which is roughly to the amount of $40,000. The city will have to pay the entire cost and be reimbursed 95% of that total. Additionally, the cost of the project, excluding any engineering done to date, is estimated to be $622,000. This amount would be including the construction costs, construction administration, and construction engineering, asphalt testing, and the actual PAPI lights, the PAPI flight check. Again, the city will be responsible for paying the entire amount and at a later time be reimbursed 95% of the cost. Administration recommends adopting the resolution allowing the mayor to sign any documents associated with the apron reconstruction.
Thanks, Jose. Council?
I move approval of the resolution authorizing the mayor to sign documents associated with the airport apron reconstruction.
Second.
Hang in there. Okay. Motion and second to approve the resolution for airport grant offer for apron reconstruction project. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 9, bid openings. Item A, airport apron reconstruction project. Jose, please.
Again, this is related to the previous item. Bids for this project were actually open on June 7th. 3 bids were received. We have included the complete bid tabulations. The low bid was from Midland Contracting from Huron at a bid of $515,190.94, while the high bid came in at $524,088.50. Bidding, as you may know, is required by the state when the cost is expected to exceed $50,000. Due to that, we had to go out to bids. The grant application will be made for this project to be paid by the state and federal funds with a 5% city match. The city would pay for the entire cost, as I mentioned previously, and later be reimbursed by the state and federal grants for the 95% of the cost. Administration recommends accepting the bid from Midland Contracting for $515,190.94, contingent upon the receipt of an FAA grant offer.
Council? A motion and a second to approve the airport apron reconstruction project. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 10, we just did that. Item 10, City Manager's Report. John, please.
Thank you. Just a reminder to the City Council, the 2018 budget sessions will be coming up here. We'll get you an email later this week to try to schedule those with you during the first part of August. Apologize, we usually get that out to you a little bit sooner so you can plan your trips and everything, but nonetheless, we're going to be looking at the first 2 weeks of August, and we will get that to you here shortly so we can get the dates that work the best. As was noted a few minutes ago, city offices are open on Monday, July 3rd, so consequently there is a City Council meeting on Monday, July 3rd. I feel like the teacher making everybody stay after, but that is not a holiday, so the council does meet on Monday, July 3rd. As I think probably everybody's noticed, has been on Main Street, but in the event that you're watching and you haven't been, the Main Street signal project did begin today. This project involves a replacement of the traffic signal at Main and University, as well as Main and Dakota Street. We try to get some word out through the local media to get that in the paper, as well, just to let people know that we'll be utilizing 4-way stops at those 2 intersections during the construction. We just ask people to proceed with caution through there. The contract does call for the contractor to be done by August 11th of this year, so that before at least the K-12 school starts, that this work would be completed. Later this week, the Pro-Am does kick off on Thursday. They're trying some different events to kind of help promote it this year. There's a free community meal on Thursday evening. I believe it starts at 7 o'clock. They'll also offer some free junior golf lessons on Thursday as well. The Pro-Am continues through the final round on Sunday. And then today, we put something on our website. We are working to look at an update to our city website. And so we're inviting the public input and ideas and thoughts on how the website could be better. So it's a short 10-question survey just to try to gather some information about what do you like, what do you don't like about our website, what would you like to see differently. So that is available on our website probably for about the next 2 weeks as we gather some of that information. And then I think the DOT meeting coming up here in July was mentioned, and we'll certainly reiterate that as we get a little bit closer to it.
Thank you, John. Any comments or questions for our city manager? Seeing none, we'll move to invoices payable. Stump Mike, any comments or questions? Certainly.
I'm just curious about maintenance for $12,705, number 49. Can you be a little more specific on what that is?
This is the software over at the Police and Communication for doing their telecommunicating and record keeping over there. So this is the software maintenance.
Okay. I thought that name was familiar, but I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
He used to teach. He used to teach at the different Zurcher. Okay. Any other questions for Mike? Motion and second to pay our bills. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Pay our bills. Consensus agenda, we have 2 items. Item A, set a public hearing date of July 3rd, 2017 for a special daily malt beverage and wine license for the Fraternal Order of Eagles on or about July 21 through 27, 2017 at the Prentice Park Baseball Field. Item B, set a public hearing date of July 3rd, 2017 for a special daily malt beverage and wine license for Clay County Agricultural Fair Association on or about August 10, 11, and 12, 2017 in the fairgrounds west of the arena. A motion and a second to approve the consensus agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Steve. Motion is second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. We're adjourned. Thank you.